Our next speaker is Mr. René Jansen, Chair of the Netherlands Gambling Authority. Welcome, René. We are very pleased to have you with us today. Please come to the stage. A little bit over a year ago, the Netherlands finally opened its regulated online gambling market, and René was there to oversee this event. And I'm sure he has quite a few valuable insights to share. Welcome again, and we're happy to have you with us today.
Dankjewel. Good afternoon to you all. Guten Tag, meine liebe Damen und Herren. It feels good to be in the historic city of Berlin, the city I visited first in 1980, quite some time ago. And it's like I could say, grandfather's talking. But it's not as it comes to the games of chance. Thank you for inviting me. It's a real privilege to be here in this conference. The previous conference block was, of course, about the regulation of the German online gambling market, and I listened to it with great interest. Moreover, while preparing for this conference, I already gained an idea of how our neighbors regulate the various gambling sectors. In all countries, we see that the methods of regulating gambling sectors have, in one way or the other, developed over the years, for instance, in the form of monopolies. In a federal state as Germany, this has led to a particularly complicated picture, or at least so it seems to outsiders like me. To me, it seems very logical that the 16 Länder, the federal states, have now joined together in an alliance to organize the supervision of online operators centrally in the Gemeinsame Glücksspielbehörde der Länder, the GGL. It is also a logical step that the GGL will be empowered to issue license for online gambling. After all, traffic on the internet does not stop at physical borders. The creation of a central regulatory body in Germany prompts, to a certain extent, a comparison with the Netherlands. The Kansspelautoriteit, or KSA as I will name it, the Dutch regulator, was set up in 2012. One important reason for this was the proposed foreseen legalization and regulation of online gambling. In the end, legislators needed until February 2019 to pass the Remote Gambling Act. And after this, it took until the 1st of April 2021 before the act actually came into effect, and until the 1st of October of that year for market opening. And I suspect that the GGL will face pretty much the same issues that are being experienced in the Netherlands and other European countries. And I will spotlight 3 areas where our experience might be relevant to those involved in the upcoming German market developments. Firstly, tackling the remaining range of illegal online offerings. Legalization of online gambling involves 2 important elements, in my view. On the one hand, we have the creation of a safe, legal gambling environment. Players must not become addicted. They must not be tempted to keep gambling for too long. And they must not forfeit more money than they intended. Besides the player, the operator needs to bear a strong responsibility. The operator must intervene if the customer demonstrates high risk or excessive gambling behavior. On the other hand, we need to robustly tackle the illegal gambling offerings. In the Netherlands, we saw that many illegal operators withdrew after we announced that much heavier fines would be imposed as soon as legalization came into effect. Many European operators also feared that they would not longer be eligible for a license if they persisted in illegally serving Dutch players. Whatever the case, we do not hesitate to deal with any remaining or newly appearing illegal offerings. To give a few examples, in July we imposed a cease and desist order, an administrative order, with periodic penalties of a maximum of 4.5 million euros on the illegal operator Gamix. And earlier this month, we also imposed administrative orders with periodic penalties to MKC Limited and LCS Limited. And I can assure you, we will be taking further action in this field. Before we impose and announce publicly sanctions, especially administrative fines, we go through a careful and hence quite long legal procedure. What I can tell you is that our enforcement department has passed various administrative reports to our legal department to facilitate further steps. And we will see the results, I guess, at the end of this year. One thing that has helped the KSA to deal with illegal gambling is that it has been granted an additional power since the legalization of online gambling. The possibility to issue a binding directive to payment service providers, to internet service providers and advertisers to cease providing their facilitating services to illegal operators. In the past, all we could do to request this. There was one factor that undoubtedly played a role in the withdrawal of several illegal operators from the Dutch market. And this was that the minister and parliament demanded that operators who carefully complied with the law would not be placed in the same starting position as operators who did not do this. So, clean operators should go first on the legal market, so to say. We, as regulator, met this demand by specifying that before operators were allowed to submit a license application, they must previously have refrained from actively offering any form of gambling to Dutch consumers for a period of almost 3 years. So we're talking about a real serious cooling down period. We monitored whether this was actually the case by examining a large number of illegal websites. As a result, various well-known operators that held licenses elsewhere in Europe were only allowed to enter the Dutch market at a later date. Some of them may even still be waiting for a license today. We started with a relatively modest number of 10 license holders in October 2021. Today, it is 20. Tomorrow, it will be 21, I can announce. I can't say anything based on my own experience about combating illegal online operators by means of IP blocks. The KSA does not have this power. I understand, however, that the GGL does indeed have or will get this power. In this respect, I will point to the enforcement working group of the Gaming Regulators European Forum, GREF. This working group, enforcement working group, has recently been set up to promote the exchange of experiences and best practices in enforcement by the various regulatory bodies in Europe. Its members include countries where IP blocks are actually included in the toolbox of enforcement instruments. They can tell us more about how effective this is, the instrument has shown. Speaking more generally, I was told that imposing an IP block requires quite a lot of work, and it seems that players can get around IP blocks fairly easily. So I'm very keen to learn how this will work in Germany in the near future. As the chairman of the GREF board, I would strongly support my GGL colleagues to make use of the knowledge acquired by other regulatory bodies. A second theme I would like to discuss this afternoon is advertising. As soon as the online market opened October last year, we were met with a real bombardment of advertising. And I consciously choose the term bombardment because this is how we experienced it in our country. Strictly speaking, the operators were not doing anything against the law here. There are no rules in our country on the volume of advertising. There are time slots, a watershed within which advertising for high-risk gambling is forbidden. There are also requirements in terms of content. Advertising may not be misleading, it may not encourage excessive gambling behavior, and may not be aimed at vulnerable groups, including minors. Things occasionally went wrong with regards to these requirements, but not in structural terms. In particular, the quantity of advertising on radio and television caused a real stir in our society. The public got really annoyed. Moreover, a lot of opinion leaders said they were worried this might increase the number of gambling addicts. The minister responsible for gambling policy felt pressure by Parliament to intervene quickly. And since the end of June this year, it has been forbidden to present role models like celebrities in advertising, and a ban on so-called untargeted advertising is planned to be introduced soon. The latter, however, first requires a change of secondary legislation. The experience gained during the market opening in the Netherlands might be of interest for the German situation. Here in Germany too, controversy might arise due to the limited social acceptance of gambling. Especially with the upcoming Football World Cup, additional advertising pressure can be expected. New license holders will want to present and showcase themselves to the general public. This also relates to an important general interest, channeling players from illegal to legal operators. Here too, there is a considerable risk of public discontent, which may prompt you to think about additional and above all, preventative measures, not only by the government, but also by industry itself. One possible option here would be overarching agreements made by the industry that aim to control the volume of advertising. Then the last and third theme I would like to highlight, and that is considering the duty of care that operators have. In our country, we received after market opening many indications and signals that legal operators were not taking the duty of care obligations seriously enough. For instance, there were examples also in the media of people who were able to gamble away lots of money without any intervention by the operator. Or the operator just limited this to a non-committal chat message. It was possible for customers to set their own limits at operators that amounted to gambling 24/7 and spending some 100,000 euros a day at a maximum. It appeared that young adults were not given extra protection. And we have started by now on increasing our regulatory activities on this issue. It's important. It's an important one. We also commissioned an international comparative study to see if lessons could be learned from them. This study was published on our website in the beginning of August, including an English language summary. It shows that there is a wide range of ways in which the duty of care can be modeled and how this can be enforced better and more effectively with legislation. And I warmly invite all regulatory bodies as well as operators to learn from the results of that study. Strikingly, Germany has chosen a gambling limit of 1,000 euros a month, applied over all license holders. To my knowledge, Germany is the first country in Europe to decide on such a strict limit. And so it will be interesting to see how this works in practice and whether it will have an effect on channeling gamblers and how effective it will be to prevent gambling addiction and financial harm. At the same time, I would like to stress one thing. It all starts with the operators themselves, because they play a real key role. They have to feel responsible for not leading gamblers into difficulties. Gambling is not just another product. This is something that operators have to be properly aware of at all times. I'm not telling you anything new when I say that the gambling industry does not exactly have a rosy image at the moment. Legal operators face an important challenge here. Trust is something that needs to be built. We must realize that trust takes years to build and just a moment to shatter. Or to translate literally from a Dutch proverb, trust arrives on foot and leaves on horseback. To conclude, I wish the GGL lots of success. And with the important and challenging task it will be undertaking, I wish German players, Germany as a country, a good and calm reform of the online gambling market with a high level of protection for German consumers. The GGL and the Kansspelautoriteit KSA are sure to come into contact again. For instance, in GREF, as I said, the Gaming Regulators European Forum. Benjamin Schwanke happily joined us at the last GREF conference in Wiesbaden. But we'll very probably meet bilaterally as well. If we can somehow be of use with the experience we have acquired, then the KSA is happy to share this with our colleagues. On the other hand, we in the Netherlands will be very interested to hear about the experience gained by the GGL. This is something we can learn from and use to improve our own regulatory work. Now, thank you very much for your attention, and I think there will be some room for questions in the panel to follow. Thank you very much.